Hello, folks. John Shinholser here, live from the McShin Foundation in Richmond, Virginia, bringing you another segment of Getting the Herd podcast. And for those of you who aren't familiar with us, McShin is an authentic recovery community organization and a recovery community center right in the heart of Richmond, Virginia. Great big organization run by recovering people, recovering from substance use disorder. So we center our conversations around that. And throughout the whole COVID-19 epidemic, we've been bringing great content, not only to the communities, but to folks all over the country and English-speaking parts of the world. We are now an award-winning podcast, and we have great guests on today. And but I'm going to let Nathan introduce himself and introduce our guest because he knows the guest a little bit better than I do. So Nathan, take it away.
Oh, well, thank you, John. And welcome, everybody. My name is Nathan Mitchell. I'm Community Outreach and Advocacy Coordinator with the McShin Foundation. And welcome to Richmond's 2020 Best Local Podcast, Getting the Herd. I like saying that. I love that we have some really good content on here. And I'm very, very happy to welcome freshman delegate Rodney Willett of the 73rd District, which just happens to be the district where I live. So he is my delegate. Thank you, sir. And Delegate Willett is on the House Health and what is it, Delegate? House
Health, Welfare, and Institutions.
There we go. And the subcommittee, which oversees DBHDS, the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Services. So very, very glad to have you here, Delegate. Thank you for participating today. And we look forward to, there we go, John, good to see you back. Welcome. Delegate, if you'd like to introduce yourself and maybe, we're relaxed here. Tell us what brings you here today.
Well, first of all, Nathan, John, thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan of McShin and what you do and the issues you're addressing. So I think this is an awesome format to do that within. As you mentioned, I do represent parts of Henrico County. And I've been doing this now. I'm getting ready to start my second year, so I still consider myself a freshman. But we've ended up with 2 sessions now because we had our long session this past year, and then as hopefully your listeners, viewers know, we had a special session which we literally just completed. The special session ended up being longer than the regular session. Just the way the thing worked out with the being virtual for at least on the House side of it. But there are important bills to address there as well. And then, sure enough, in less than a couple of months now, we'll be back in session in January. So a lot going on there. And again, I'm just delighted to be here today.
Quick thought came to mind. When you were campaigning, we had a candidate forum here at McShin. And I think we had 22 candidates running for a variety of races, but you kind of impressed me when you came over here. You were very articulate, in your campaign stumping, but you made it a point, you said, look, if I get elected, I like what I'm seeing here, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to find out more about y'all, and I think I can help you. And you reached out to us. And what is it that's on your mind that you really, what struck a chord with you and how we can have a relationship and help each other?
Yeah, well, John, a couple of things. First of all, it's really all about Nathan. He's one of the smartest people I've dealt with at the General Assembly. So anything to work with Nathan, and to say the same about you. No, but on a serious note, McShin is a success story, and you guys have figured out how to address an unmet need in this area, and are helping literally hundreds, thousands over the course of your existence of people get to a better place. And I like success. I like taking successful models and then expanding on that. And I think you figured out the equation here towards getting folks on a better path with addiction recovery. And so, yeah, I come from a mixed background. My professional life has been in the private sector. I've helped to start 3 businesses here in Richmond. That was originally in the legal side, but then I got into the technology world. I've worked in all of my life, worked a lot with government, and that's why I'm in government now. But I've been had government clients for many years, so I know state government pretty well. But then there's the nonprofit world and the NGO world, and that's the world you are in. And I think we need all of those entities to make this thing work and to help people. But what was super intrigued by and continue to be impressed by is the success of McShin as part of that equation, and leveraging really what are honestly not giant resources. You are not overburdened with financial resources, and yet you get results, and you're helping so many people. So that's why I was initially intrigued, because honestly, until I got into the campaign mode, I really didn't know much about McShin. I was fortunate to spend several different visits there, including that candidate forum you mentioned, and have stayed in touch through you and through Nathan. But what we need to do here is it's not so tell your story, and I think you're good at telling your story, but figure out how to take this thing, take your model and replicate it, because you've got it. I mean, you guys have figured out a successful model, and I really want to see that flourish.
Yeah, hey Nathan, just brief the viewers how you found McShin, and then how you ended up down in General Assembly being one of our chief advocates.
Well, as it turned out, I got arrested, and I spent a lot of time mulling over that arrest and how it was everybody else's fault but mine. And I got, sorry, I'm hearing sirens behind me, so forgive me if there's a that's funny. But I ended up in a jail program up in Northern Virginia, and well, long story short, I ended up, going back to jail a second time after I violated on probation. I got arrested on a simple possession charge for narcotics, Schedule 1, Schedule 2, which is a felony in Virginia. It's up to 10 years imprisonment. Now, I threw away the first offenders law, the 251, so I was unable to qualify for that because I continued to use in pretrial. And while I continued to use, I continued to disconnect from pretrial services, which were really only just taking urine screens from me once every couple of weeks. When I violated there, I ended up becoming a felon. I was sentenced to 2 years in prison for my simple possession charge, which was, I was sentenced to it, and then it was not I didn't have to serve the time in prison, but I had 2 years of probation. So I served the 2 years of probation, but within a few months, I continued to use while I was on probation, and I violated again in probation. So then I went back to jail and I served more time. But that second time I went to jail, I found a program. There was the McShin program was in the jail where I went, and I saw these people that just seemed happier. It seemed like we weren't arguing over, I know you probably haven't spent time in jail, Rodney, but they weren't arguing over soup or what they were saying about their moms, but they actually seemed to be putting some words together and finding some happiness and actually living together in a pod together. And it just seemed to be happier. I asked to go to that pod. I went in there and I found that I didn't have to hate myself. I found people who understood me. The people who came into the jail to talk, to support the program were people with lived experience who had been literally in my shoes, my shower shoes, in jail before, who came and shared their experience, strength, and hope. The big thing being the hope at that point, and showed me that I could absolutely build a life worth living, and I could overcome this problem with a network of people. So once I got out of jail, there's a lot of little things that happened in between, but I ended up coming to Richmond. I was mandated here, and I thought I'd come down for a 28-day program, and that was about almost 3 years ago. So,
here's the point I asked that, Rodney, and this is important for the General Assembly members to hear this.
Yeah.
When recovering people have access to the inside of these jails and prisons, and we can go in there and do what we do best, give that hope shot, create these environments of recovery, and we have the reentry. So when they get out, he had a place to come. We actually had a recovery center right across from the jail up in Warrenton at the time. And throughout Virginia, and I imagine other states, jail programs, they're being created, most of them by the institutions, collaborating with the local CSBs or whoever they can collaborate with. But our section Our model, we're able to take freestanding programs into these facilities. We fully funded all these programs for the first 10 years of our existence, maybe the first 12 years.
Mhm.
And we actually demonstrated tens of millions of dollars worth of savings to the taxpayers without funding from the funders. Now, you're a funder. The General Assembly is a funder. Imagine what we could do if the legislation would fund us to go into these jails and prisons, as well as ask the jails to cooperate with us, make it simpler so we can get up in there. And you're a businessman, so you know money well spent. You know what I mean? Here's a value that's less expensive, gets a greater outcome. What are your thoughts, Delegate Willett, on how we can maybe get some action in this particular area and in the next session?
Yeah. Well, I think there are a lot of business people actually in the legislature, and so the word or the phrase that's going to resonate with them is return on investment, ROI, and you've got a clear, positive, significant ROI, meaning with relatively few dollars spent, the return is huge in terms of what you're able to do for the people that you help. And of course, you've got all sorts of statistics that bear that out. So I think, again, a lot of it is on the education side. And I think McShin does a great job of sharing your story. We need to continue doing that. Unfortunately, it takes time to make these good ideas stick. But I think we keep telling that story and help people understand this ROI. Because one thing I was going to share, to Nathan's point, yes, I've not been through what he's been through, but I know people who have, and especially in this day and age, it's hard not to know someone, not to even to have family members who have had addiction issues, and possibly even been incarcerated for it and had struggles with it. So it affects everyone. It's not one socioeconomic level, although it's certainly weighted towards some of those lower levels, so folks with multiple challenges. But my point is addiction cuts across the spectrum of races and levels of income, and we need to look at that. But particularly those in most need, they have fewer opportunities. They can't go and get resources on their own, and that's obviously where you're coming in. So going back to the money part of it, everyone likes something that's successful, but a proven model with a proven ROI.
Now this is a question for both of you. Nathan, 3-4 years ago, you're sitting in jail. Your life's all screwed up. Fast forward, did you ever imagine you might be like our chief advocate down at the General Assembly, interacting with the policymakers? I mean, what kind of dream did that turn out to be?
Never in a million years, John, would I have thought, or Delegate Willett, would I have thought I'd be here today. And yet, I can't imagine not being here today. It's so important to my personal recovery that I continue to share my story and speak out and try to help other people. But I believe that what we do as my part of McShin is just so important. I got so much out of McShin. Now, I'm always going to be Rob McShin. There are other models that do a great job too, and we should support multiple models. But this is what literally saved my life. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to continue pushing that message forward, that we can help everybody, find something that works for them.
And Delegate Willett, you said something really critical. You said you're here because of Nathan. So Nathan must have impacted you and his involvement down at the General Assembly. That's got to make you feel as a delegate that we got people that are reintegrated with the community and society, but they're taking an active role in their civic engagement. And what's your impression of Nathan? A little more, what do you think the General Assembly members like and see about Nathan?
Yeah. Well, let me try to paint a picture for you of what it's like during session, and then how Nathan fits into that picture. So it's an incredibly frantic, hectic time. Literally any given day, I personally, not just talking about all the members, but just me individually, I may meet more than 100 people in a single day, come into my office and then in the halls. And of course, that's pre-COVID. We'll see what it looks like this year. But in the middle of that, I mean, I walk outside my office, and it's about the hall there's about 20 feet wide. There could be 100 people right there packed in, different interest groups, lobbyists. These are people who are representing other groups who are paid to do that. It's a bit chaotic at times, but the point is you've got many different people representing many different groups. In a lot of cases, I mentioned the lobbyists. These folks are very highly paid professionals who are advocating on behalf of their clients on a particular bill or whatever. So amongst these folks who, and I don't mean to, I'm not sharing anything that's not known here, literally being paid in some cases thousands of dollars per hour to be there. In the middle of all that high-priced, high-powered lobbying, there's Nathan. And I will argue, Nathan, I'm not going to disclose your salary on the line here, but I'm going to guess that you don't make $1,200 an hour at McShin. Maybe something close to that, but probably not over 12.
I don't even think he gets minimum wage, to be honest with you. I don't know what he makes.
Yeah. I get something way more valuable.
Okay. Yeah. So in the midst of all that high-powered lobbying, there's Nathan. And I would argue he is as effective as any of the 1,000+ hour people because of his experience, where he's coming from. He's so grounded in what you're doing because he's been through this program. And so I think that's why we're friends, and I enjoy working with him so much because I know where he's coming from. I know he is absolutely speaking the truth.
Is anybody else down there advocating for similar issues such as ours? Recovery support services, funding, stuff like that.
That's a good question, and I don't want to miss anyone by saying there's no one. I mean, I know McShin the best. I certainly can say that. I mean, there'll be pieces and parts of it. So like you share interest in criminal justice reform. Well, there are other groups interested in criminal justice reform. You share an interest in mental health support, behavioral health support, and there's certainly other groups that focus on that. You're pulling together several parts of it. So I may be missing someone, but I certainly think, I mean, for me, I know you guys the best in terms of on the addiction recovery spectrum. You're my go-to people on that.
Did you hear that, Nathan? I told you we were the best, man. You gotta start believing that. So Nathan, is this your first or second year down at General Assembly?
This will be my second year down there. Yeah. Coming up.
You got one whole year under your belt.
Yes, sir.
Just briefly, what are your thoughts about the recovery guy down there, representing the recovery movement,
most everybody, I get to learn the secretaries. I get to meet the secretaries so that they're happy to see me and they give me access. They're the ones who say, oh yeah, you could probably pop your head in there, but really, all joking aside, I love being down there because the energy, from all sides, both sides of the aisle, we come down there with a message of hope. We come down there with a message of something that we can, with demonstrable, evidence-based, facts, we come down there and for the most part, we're just, people like us.
Yeah, they're called legislative aides and assistants.
Yeah, the aides, yeah.
I want to say 12 years ago, I became friends with Walter Stosh's legislative aide, Dr. Scarborough.
Oh, yeah.
While having that relationship, she wanted, I basically talked her into doing her PhD dissertation on our jail program at the city jail. And then I just got up a minute ago, and I wanted to exemplify how important these relationships are with these legislative aides. But here's a copy of her dissertation.
Oh, wow.
And it basically spells out how these programs in jails work and operate, but the return on investment, I wrote that phrase down, how much money we save the taxpayers, how much we reduce recidivism, and that's 2012 on that document. We started that program in 2008, so we have 12 years worth of evidence here. So, Mr. Willett, when we come back down there, we mean business. And we spoke earlier in the conversation, Delegate Willett. After that conversation, what thoughts were in your brain, to what kind of play we might have here in the upcoming session?
Yeah, so a couple thoughts, and one thing I wanted to make a point just in terms of the again, look, and you play this role too, and certainly Nathan does. We as legislators need information. We by no means know all. I mean, yes, we are the ultimate makers of the laws, but the input you provide is crucial. And I really need to emphasize that, because I'm a little nervous about this session, because we're not going to have the same face-to-face interaction that we normally do. So maybe it'll be on a screen like this, but the information sharing, the statistics, the numbers, the stories. When I've been fortunate to come to McShin, I've met people coming through the program. That's what sticks with me. That's what I remember when we're looking at legislation, looking at funding, and saying, what does this mean, and why do we need to do this? So I just want to emphasize that, just again, for your listeners and viewers to understand. Yeah, this is not folks just hanging out having a good time. I mean, this is an information exchange. It's a learning process, and we need. I mean, I absolutely depend on the information that you're providing. So leveraging that information in terms of opportunities this session. I mean, I am realistic that, yeah, it's going to be a challenging session. It's a short time frame, 45 days. We're going to be meeting virtually in a hybrid or some combination of for us. So we'll have to see what that looks like. So yeah, we're not going to get everything done we want to get done, but yeah, these are extraordinarily tough times. There were major, obviously you had tons of need and demand for your services before COVID. Look at where we are now. We've had earlier discussions in terms of the numbers you're looking at. I've heard it just in the broader context of, let's just talk about mental health support needs, huge growth there. The broader numbers we're seeing on substance abuse, no question, those numbers have skyrocketed during COVID. So we took something that was already underserved, underfunded, and now the problem's gotten worse. And so we've got to get in front of it. And I think, again, I can't create a revenue stream that's not there, to help fund these things. The state, its hands are, we're not the federal government. We can't print money. But I do think this problem, it's not that it's sort of been put to the side. It's actually gotten worse.
Well, one thing I always try to let members know over the years is when you invest money in what we're talking about, you actually save a lot of money somewhere else that you can reappropriate to these other areas of need. So you want to, McShin model can make y'all money if you would just, give us that little bit of respect on that little area. I'll make you guys a ton of money. You can blow it any way you want. Nathan, I got a bunch of other questions, but before I move on, anything standing out in your mind you want to share?
Well, there's revenue stream, and I think, John, you're probably going to touch on something I already am thinking about as far as adding to the revenue stream, something we discussed before. But, John, I think you're going to more eloquently start that conversation, so please.
Well, popped up earlier today. A couple of years ago, we talked about VASAP, where people lose their license, they go to VASAP, ASAP. Rodney, you familiar with that?
Yeah.
And we had a bill passed, and it almost went to the finish line, but we had to research over the year. But make a long story short, when you're sitting in a jail program for like 6 months or a year, or you come through McShin, or you're clean a year or two, and you got to go to VASAP, and the way VASAP works, you got to pay them a bunch of money, and then you get referred to a clinician, and they decide whether or not you need more treatment. But if you don't need it, you're supposed to be able to go on your way. But what they do, they want you to, like today, a kid goes to VASAP, and the clinician said, you're good. You've been clean 13 months. You went through McShin. You did the 72-hour state certification program for peers. I mean, the kid had a long list of educational stuff he's done. And VASAP, even though VASAP said you get them to sign off on it and you're good by us, then they said, well, you need to do 12 weeks of VASAP over here at our office. And it's like, are you kidding me? So Rodney, I bring that up because besides the money issues at the General Assembly, we have some policy issues that really doesn't cost the General Assembly money or the taxpayers' money. Mm-hmm. It might interfere with VASAP's dictatorship of their organization, but that's an area we got to revisit. Now, we spoke earlier about marijuana. You know, I'm old school guy. I don't smoke it. I'm not going to smoke it, but I know they should treat it like alcohol. All the states where they treat it like alcohol, they get to regulate it. They get to do the age limit, the potency of the marijuana, but there's taxes that come with that.
Right.
And we hope, and we know historically in Virginia, whenever there's a new tax stream, it gets gobbled up by the agencies and the bureaucracies. Well, this might be an area that we can maybe carve some of those funds out and use them for recovery support services provided by the authentic non-government organizations. Rodney, your thought on legalization? Keep in mind, 68% of Virginians want to treat it like alcohol. Yeah. So we got the vast majority agree with this. Number two, there really is there's not a lot of scientific evidence why it's so harmful. Alcohol and sugar are both more harmful than THC and marijuana. So your thoughts on that briefly, Rodney?
Yeah. Well, I always, lived in Virginia my whole life, and I like to think of Virginia as the leader in so many ways. And we have been a leader in so many ways. But on the marijuana legalization side, we are lagging. We are behind. The ship has sailed. See the portrait of the naval ship behind you. That was passed by. Nationally, it's clear that where this is going, and that's the legalization. Same thing happened, if you remember, back with the lottery. Virginia didn't have a lottery. Everyone else had a lottery. So people were basically going to Maryland, North Carolina, West Virginia to play the lottery. And finally, Virginia said, well, you can't, that ship has sailed. There's money going out the door, so we have a lottery. We're looking at casino gambling now for similar reasons. But on marijuana, it's not a debate. It's going to be legalized. It's just a question of how we do it. And so to that point, I would rather be focusing and connecting the dots that you've connected, which are, yes, regulating in a way that's as safe as we can make it, because I do have concerns about use by minors and things like that. But then the revenue stream, it's significant. There are major dollars out there. As we know, when you look at tobacco tax revenues, which are going down, I think marijuana would be certainly upswing on that. And so then the critical question is, what becomes of those dollars? And I again, I'm sitting here with the McShin audience, so I'm not just saying this because of the audience. I'm just saying because it just makes logical sense. The dollars are coming. We're taxing marijuana, which is a drug, and why wouldn't it make sense to use those dollars to deal with drug-related issues, including addiction? Exactly. It's logical.
Well, the OxyContin lawsuit, the first settlement from 2006, Virginia got $56 million. And think of the destruction that caused throughout Virginia, Southwest Virginia. And I believe 99% of that money went to policing it up. State police, guns, radios, cars, capital improvements on police headquarters and whatnot. I got the list of where it all went. I don't think any went for recovery support services. So we have a history of really doing the worst thing you can do with those dollars once you get them. That Navy ship, that's my battle group from 1981. That's an original watercolor. I'm in the Straits of Hormuz when they freed the Iranian hostages. So that's a real scene, a real portrait. And my brother-in-law made that for me. So in case he's wondering what that, I'm a Marine, but I've spent more time at sea than most sailors. So now,
very cool.
Before I move on, anything on the marijuana issue?
I was just, John, real quickly, just for the viewers and the listeners, in case they weren't aware of this. So we are, even though I've said Virginia is lagging, we are taking steps in the right direction. So this past session, we did decriminalize marijuana in terms of the penalties for simple possession and things like that, and it's no longer felony for that. Too many people, I mean, thousands, tens of thousands of people incarcerated for simple possession, filling up the jails when that's not really solving the problem. Now, again, major distributors and things like that's a different can of worms and a different crime. But the simple possession thing, it was a waste of resources. We were solving no problems there. So we made that reform. And now, as we sit on the cusp of another session, yes, there is a study right now looking at what legalized marijuana could look like in Virginia. Because we want to actually, there is an advantage to being a little late to the party, and that is, okay, we can learn from what other states have done.
See what everybody else did.
Yeah. And there were some issues in the taxing part of it. So we learned from what went well and what didn't go well, and we'll do better at that. But I think I just want to make the point that we've been behind, but I think we had a chance actually to jump ahead, because not only do we legalize it, but we do it better. And maybe
the reason I'm so passionate about it is because these drug laws, marijuana laws, they harm a person's ability to recover in most cases. It's kind of like seatbelt laws. 85% of people that wear seatbelts going to get a positive outcome, 15% don't. See, a lot of these drug laws, that's an 85% of the problem with recovery. It might help 15% of the people, but that's what we're dealing with. And marijuana, because it was racial enacted in the first place, I would think that'd be an easier sell to unracialize it. New Jersey legalized recreational marijuana, but between now and when that date hits, there's an arrest frenzy taking place up in New Jersey right now. I mean, it's like the criminal justice system is trying to hurry up and make hay while they can. And this leads me to my last point of contention with drug laws. And like in Virginia, if you overdose, you call 911, the person calling and the person overdose and don't get arrested. However, if you're on probation or parole and your PO finds about an overdose, then you get violated. We got a guy here right now, he had an overdose. He came here to get help. His PO found out about it. So he had to go do 2 weeks in jail, hire a lawyer, get permission to come back to McShin. So these drug laws, there's a big ripple effect that really interferes with recovery. Drug courts help people, jail programs help people, good POs, they help people, these judges help people, but the vast majority of people, these situations hurt them more than they help them. And this is some of the stuff we got to work through. We're the recovering community. We can show you all day long, okay, this is the problems we're having, but we need y'all to react with some solutions on your side of the aisle, on your side of the house. And when you mention that word, Virginia leader, by God, it's time for Virginia to be a true leader in this particular space. And we can do it. And I'm really optimistic that you guys can really pile on and let's really help forge the future for not only Virginia, but the rest of the nation. I mean, we have the knowledge, we have the model, we got the members. It doesn't take a lot of money. It's frustrating at times, to say the least, but I do feel good. Nathan, you got some thoughts, it looks like?
Well, I do, and my thoughts go towards the declassification that we spoke about earlier today, or defelonization of simple possession charges for Schedule 1 and Schedule 2. And I was reminded after our conversation this morning by one of our regular listeners, that 6 states have recently declassified and made simple possession charges from a felony to a misdemeanor. And those states include such liberal bulwarks as Utah and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So we've got these very conservative
states. They're all doing it.
Exactly, and that's my point. Is like we've got Colorado. Well, Colorado's kind of purple, but you got Utah, Oklahoma, Connecticut, California, and Alaska, which have all recently declassified simple possession charges to misdemeanor charges. And so I think that movement is and there are different reasons for it. I'm actually just reading about this myself and why each state did it differently. But there's a real movement, going forward right now towards that, getting the problem out of the criminal justice system. We talked about Oregon today on the phone call, and I know that's that rippling effect of what happened in Oregon on last Tuesday should make everybody in the country think and to really examine what happened in Oregon, but also examine what's happened in Portugal. The Portugal model, which is about a country of about 10 million people, just a little bit bigger than the Commonwealth of Virginia, has a proven model of recovery that works. It puts families back together. It creates a healthier populace, and it stops people from dying. And it continues to let people build on their lives without the burden of now having a felony charge on their backs for the rest of their lives. So I think that, as we move forward, and take a leadership role in the country, as Virginia should, we can examine what's going on in Oregon, examine what's happened in Portugal, and we can maybe march towards, maybe in early steps of declassification right now, like Oklahoma and Utah and Alaska have done. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's another logical next step. I mean, we cleared it with marijuana. That took a while, took a change in leadership, but we got there. Although I think, honestly, end of the day here, what you're talking about is going to save. It's going to save lives. It's going to save lives because we're going to get to more effective programs. I mean, incarceration is not saving lives, at least in most cases. Treatment is saving lives, and so. The point shouldn't be, it's all about locking people up. No, the point is getting people better, getting people away from drugs and things they shouldn't be taking, if that's the case. And I think there are better answers out there. And it's tough. I mean, it is a speaking of the naval metaphor, it's a slow ship to turn, that this big state we have, this big commonwealth. So yeah, we're not as agile as we should be. But when you're seeing positive results, you're seeing these other states doing it, you're seeing it as really a bipartisan effort. Right. Why not?
Do you what do you see what are some of our problems going to be at the General Assembly, the way you see them right now, Delegate Willett?
Well, the biggest challenge, John, is certainly the revenue side of things. I mean, Virginia, like every state's taken a hit. I mean, I will say everybody talks about the good old days. Well, for me, the good old days were up until March 15th.
You never had them.
Yeah, pre-COVID. Because I'll tell you, we were on a roll, and I'll speak more specifically about Henrico County. Henrico County was, even in a state that was on a roll, Henrico County was on an even bigger roll in terms of the economic development here, and just we really had it going at so many levels. And yeah, a good economy takes care of a lot of things. With a good economy, we have better schools. With a good economy, we have better health care. Good economy, we have better roads, better transportation infrastructure. So that's where we were headed. COVID obviously sucked a lot of the air out of the room.
You mentioned healthcare, like Medicaid, for example. Did you know that you can have Medicaid and get put on Suboxone and methadone? They'll pay for the maintenance, but they won't pay for a detox. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't it cover detox? An ambulatory 5-day taper. Why isn't there reimbursement for these Suboxone doctors? They will never have incentive to detox an addict when they know they're only going to get paid for putting them on maintenance. And if you put somebody on Suboxone for a long time, man, you opened up a can of worms in most cases. Yeah. What are your thoughts on something like that? You probably didn't even know that, did you?
I did know that. I mean, I've certainly heard other stories about flaws. I mean, Medicaid is a giant system. It's a federal system. State implements it, but
that's a state law. The state can change that at the state level.
Yeah. Well, then that's something we should look at, because that seems that's a hole right there. But I was coming. Go ahead.
But the reason I was mentioning that was because there's a list of stuff we can get done in a short session that doesn't involve money. It'll actually make you money and save you money. And that's one of those areas I'm talking about. We have a lot of nuggets for you. I'm excited for you. We got to get some results on the nugget, so when we go gold mining next year, we can get in the main shaft.
No, absolutely. Because I was going to say, yeah. So the big challenge of the day, as we come into discussion, of course, is revenue. And again, just to remind folks, we're not the federal government. Federal government, and thank God they have this authority when there's a national crisis like this pandemic. They literally can print money, and that's what happened with the CARES Act and other things. They printed money, and we had trillions of dollars flow into the economy.
Got those laser printers up there running 24/7.
They can crank out some cash, and that's was necessary. And I'd be one to argue we need to do that at least one more round here. Yeah, the state doesn't print money. The state, we can only generate money through the taxes and fees that we have, and I do think, coming back to the marijuana example, that might be a new revenue source for us. But the dollars, we need to get the economy going again, because we need those tax revenues to pay for these things. Now, that said, yeah, we do take in billions and billions of dollars, and so it's always good to look at how those dollars are being spent and to be really prudent, really effective in how we do that. And I think that's the case we're making today. Is like, look, we're not asking for all the money in the world, a portion of it. We're just asking to spend better. We're asking to spend more effectively, and I think that's the point. And then I do like, because I've also worked on public-private partnerships where the model was to save money. So that cost savings model or cost avoidance model, that's also an important point, where you get a successful system in place that, for example, we all benefit keeping people out of prisons. No one wins, except maybe a private prison operator, but no one wins with mass incarceration and filling up the prisons with folks. I mean, it's the dead end for so many people. It's a huge expense.
The retirement programs for some of the judges are contingent upon the jails being full, but that's another story.
Okay.
I'm not convinced of that, but do you realize when prohibition was lifted and they had a tax on alcohol, which, number one, the tax has not kept up with inflation, so way under taxed. But the tax was supposed to go for cleaning up the abuse of alcohol to include public safety and health care. We have a lot of products that consumers are buying that infect our healthcare, such as all these prescription drugs that people get high on, they abuse, all these over-the-counter drugs that people abuse and they get high on. Why don't we have a little impact fee on those drugs and use some of those dollars for recovery, for treatment, to include the tax funded stuff at the CSB level, but also the non-government organizations. There's pockets of ways to increase revenue streams that doesn't affect mainstream tax increases. These are impact fees. So if it was good enough for tobacco and alcohol, we should start considering that for these other abused substances. And these manufacturers know damn good and well these products are being abused, and they're getting away with that. So this is a way to help in that area. You got thoughts on that?
Well, it's certainly, I think, you hear the expression, everything's on the table. I mean, given the economic situation, there are a lot of things on the table that maybe we would not have looked at before. I mean, Virginia is I'm super pro business, and I don't want to overburden business with taxes and regulations and things like that. But I have to agree, though, that in certain areas, from a taxing standpoint, on again some of the things you mentioned, if we're not at the bottom, in some cases we're close to it on the low end. So you have to look at that, and it's certainly been visited before. And I'm not talking about quadrupling things overnight, but we've got to look at it, because the keep coming back to the fact these issues aren't going away. Case in point, they're getting worse with addiction. And if we don't start spending now, imagine trying to catch up even 5 years from now. The issues we're going to have. So
yeah, Nathan, we're shaping him to be a champion right now. Robert jumped on late. Robert, we already talked about reclassifying the drugs before you come on the show. We got some regulars on the show here watching, Rodney.
Oh, great.
Now, how about this? There used to be a law in Virginia, and there still is. It's called, if somebody can demonstrate a great savings that you're like at the community service board level, we invest a lot of money in the community service board, their delivery of substance abuse services. And I'm not sure they're measuring the outcome like we have to measure our outcome. So maybe come up with an outcome measurement system. And if we have a better way or a less expensive way of getting a greater outcome, I thought there was a law that said people like us would have access to those tax dollars. Are you familiar with that?
Gosh, I may be blanking on something there, and I apologize. It's certainly familiar, and I certainly get the principle of it, trying to identify things, because the state does want to encourage. I mean, to get just by analogy, we have other programs, for example, in transportation and in technology, to allow for partnerships to get basically better services for the state. Transportation, in this case, better roads. So that's why you see some roads that are privately operated.
Private partnerships.
Exactly. So we've set this legal precedent. We've done it in the technology world, we've done it in the education world. in the transportation world. So yeah, that's certainly a ripe
And
opportunity.
they use that to use to privatize jails and prisons too. It's cheaper. Let's do it. But we keep running up against the bureaucrats and the agencies. No, it's not fair if they don't have to demonstrate their outcomes. What are we as taxpayers getting for the money we're giving you? Well, they don't have it. It's not there. It doesn't exist. And if it does, it exists in a language that only they can understand. The common person couldn't understand it. So I think getting away from antiquated systems. Look at Vietnam War when they did away with the Springfield rifle, then they brought in the Colt M16s. They opened up the bidding process. Who can make better weapons? As a result, America got some great weapons. Because they privatized development of weapons. Recovery is a weapon against addiction. We're a damn good weapon. The recovery model. And I don't want to spend my whole life criticizing the government or criticizing these CSBs. I mean, I shouldn't have to do that. Champions like you do critical moving forward. Trying to somehow get everybody at the table making sense of this stuff.
Yeah. Well, point well taken, John. And I do think more and more. Look, we've got to look at what works. And I think I started the conversation saying, I worked in the private sector. I worked with nonprofits, and I'm now working with government. I've done that before, actually. And so there may be a mixture there, but if one, in this case, a nonprofit NGO has got a better answer, then why aren't we using it? I mean,
Nathan, what do you think?
I think back to the conversation we had this morning. You mentioned STEP Virginia, right? And that speaks to CSBs. And I know part of STEP Virginia, they talk about same-day access. But if you actually look at what is being said in STEP Virginia about same-day access, it's not same-day access to services. It's same-day assessment where you might have access days, weeks, even months after the fact. We at McShin and other organizations like us are able to provide actual same-day access. You come in, you need something, we can do it. And to be able to give that moment, because the reality is that an addict in active addiction is not likely to repeat himself or herself and say, hey, I need help more than once. I need help. Oh, I don't get it. I can't get it now. Well, I'm going to go back out and use, and often people die. We can do that. So I know the CSBs have an important part of our behavioral health structure here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And of course, you're a champion. You're part of the decisions for that. We are another entity that can continue to help the CSBs, work with the CSBs when necessary, but provide actual same-day access. That very, very important same-day access. And we're not creating data to report back to the government. We're creating data to help each other live. So I think that's an important part of the piece too. Our evidence isn't to just prove that our numbers, are saving dollars. Our numbers are to show that we're saving lives. And where there's the heart in there, we can actually make a difference. So, thank you, Crystal. Right. So I think that's an important piece of that. And while we want to work with CSPs and continue to be a part of that solution, we are a separate piece of the puzzle that doesn't need to be contingent on the CSPs.
Yeah, the same-day access. That's another part of the education process, because people hear, I guess they hear what they want to hear, and I'm certainly could be guilty of that. I hear someone say, "Oh no, it's same day." Well, it's maybe same day assessment, as you mentioned, not actually getting someone into treatment, and that happens in particularly in this behavioral health spectrum in a number of different ways. And I think the point is that people, legislators in particular, understood what was actually happening, more people would be going, hold on, that's not what I understood to be required here, or what should be required. So yeah, I think that awareness, some education there will help us push on that to say, no, that's assessment's important. Access is critical, and we've got to make that happen. So I think I certainly am more aware of that. This is second, third conversation I've had this week related to same day access in this context, and so we need to stay on that.
Do you have relations with the State Corporation Commission, the people who oversee the insurance companies here in Virginia?
At one level, sure. I think that it's one nice thing about being a legislator is you do have a lot of access to a lot of people in government.
Because, back in the mid 80s, here in the Richmond area alone, we probably had 500 clinical treatment beds where people could get into same day. Every hospital in Richmond had a drug and alcohol rehab in the hospital. And we had St. John's, we had Westbrook, you had a bunch of freestanding treatment. The criminal justice system wasn't as built out as it is today, but insurance had to actually reimburse for treatment if you had insurance. Now Affordable Care Act was supposed to make it so they couldn't, not provide it, but they're getting away from some of that now. So I feel like the insurance companies are once again, they got too much control and power over what they can and can't do, and they disregard federal laws. And nobody at the state seems to be holding their feet to the fire. Of course, I might be talking about something you're not familiar with, but if you are, I can give you a lot of cases and incidences where somebody downtown's on the take, man. I got a bad feeling about these insurance boys.
Well, I'm not sure I could answer that part of it, but I will say that there are issues in terms of that, how that's the payments and the oversight there. And yeah, the state can blame the feds can blame the state. There's actually on the insurance oversight, it's a shared responsibility depending on the insurer and what's being done. But we need to do more of that. And again, it's all back to effectiveness. How effective are we being? And I think there are a lot of questions about that, and to keep revisiting the efficacy of these programs.
What now? We're running low on time, but okay, do's and don'ts. When we come down advocating, when we call on our members, what are the things we're doing right? What are the things we shouldn't be doing?
Well, coming down, and whatever coming down means this year, connecting. We'll say connecting, absolutely important, and never think that you're burdening us. I really want to emphasize that, because some people think that this is this is an interference, this is an interruption. No, it is a critical part of the process to have this interaction, to have this information exchange. So number one, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. I do say, your numbers are good, statistics are good, stories are even better. You can kind of like all, as how the mental psyche works. We a lot of us like numbers, and we all like stories. And I think you combining the two, which is why McShin is great, because you've got the data, that's awesome, and then you've got these stories to share, and the combination of the two is incredible. And so I would just say, in that sense, keep doing what you're doing, document what you can, and then share that. Brevity is good, because my limited memory capacity here on the computer brain, but bullet points are great, because we want to be, I know I'm not alone in wanting to be an advocate here. I know I'm not alone in wanting to do better, wanting the state to do better, and I think a lot of it's just informing. And even though some of these points are so obvious, it's like saying, like they say in you're trying to sell something, you got to or announce something, you got to hit the consumer 6 times. Well, in this case, you got to hit the legislator about 20 times because we're a little dense on the uptake sometimes. But we just keep putting this information out there. And I think, again, there are other champions, and we come together, and then pretty soon it's not just majority, it's everyone saying, okay, yeah, this makes sense. We got to.
You work close with the Department of Behavioral Health, Developmental Services.
We do, absolutely.
Because I'd like to get an appointment with them, maybe me, you, Nathan, and you get their commissioner. What do they got down there? Commissioner?
Yeah, Commissioner
Land.
Land.
Have a meeting with them, because we see some holes in the peer training that they're doing. We want to understand a little bit more about some of the funding streams. I think there's I think they keep going to some of their favorites, but they may not be getting the best bang for their buck. Stuff like that. But I think it's time to have a conversation with them. I don't feel like we're being heard or being respected, so to speak. And what they do there trickles down to the localities, the 40 CSBs. So, right. We got to have a little better relationship with those folks.
Yeah, well, I'd like to make that happen. I was with the commissioner, actually, in a call earlier this week, and I have great respect for her there, and I think we can Absolutely make that happen.
And your caucus, we would like to have a better relationship with the caucus. We want to be able to provide you with, real time, common sense solution to problems, but at the same time, we want reciprocation too, of course, So we want to be the best state we can be, man. And teamwork gonna make that work,
Absolutely, John.
Hey, Nathan, we're winding out of time. Closing thoughts.
I do have some, and my thoughts are this. We've discussed previously this morning and a little bit here some of the priorities that we have here for recovery in Virginia. And I think, you'll be hearing from us as McShin and also as a part of the Recovery Advocacy Project. What are your thoughts, Delegate Willett, on what we can accomplish in the next session based on our conversations? And then from there, I have a quote that I want to share with you.
Well, just real quickly, the recap. I mean, at a minimum, education. At a minimum, we're going to be making the point, sharing this information, making sure folks understand, the legislators understand the statistics, the stories, and the tremendous need that's out there, and then how effective your programs being. At a minimum, we're going to do that. Yes, I'm always an optimist, and I hope we can actually move. We're going to get a better revenue forecast, and we can move. Get more dollars and get some of those dollars into programs like yours. I think that would be a tremendous step. Some of the legislative things we've talked about, whether it's marijuana legalization or other measures, those are heavier lifts in a short session because the time frame is really compressed. But sometimes it may take this session plus another session. I mean, there is a study on marijuana legalization, so some may say wait a year, but I still think that doesn't keep us from having the conversation. And keeping it front burner, and then it'll be easier to get it through. So I think there are a number of areas we can make progress on, and it's just going to, just have to keep at it.
Yeah, November 16th, JLARC presents that report on legalization. So we're all looking forward to that. The quote I want to share with you, President-elect Joe Biden said in the debates on October 22nd, "No one should be going to jail because they have a drug problem. They should be going to rehabilitation, not to jail. We should fundamentally change the system, and that's what I'm going to do." Do you agree with that statement?
Hear, hear.
Yeah, we're gonna hold him and everyone who agrees to that. We're gonna hold him to it, because that's fundamentally what we're all trying to do. Purple, blue side, red side.
Delegate Willett, I can say this: you Google me, you'll see I'm a pretty centered purple guy. What purple means, I'm not red or blue. I go with whoever's for recovery. And if you're our champion, we're gonna be your champion too. So, somebody put up there, teamwork makes the dream work,
Yeah, like that.
So we appreciate you coming on today. I feel real good about the conversation. I feel like you heard us. I feel like we have a segue into messaging Nathan and really educating, getting somewhere. I know you're a busy man, but thank you so much for coming on the show today.
I really enjoyed this. Really did. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Delegate. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Alex. Good job, Alex.
Okay.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Thanks, everyone.